yane, bueno, yane, bueno, yane, bueno, yane, bueno, yane, bueno, yo ho! I say my name in my language, which is in English, it's Larry Spotted Crow. I'm a cultural educator for the Nipmuc tribe, my people here, central Massachusetts. I'm also an instructor at the Craft and Job Corps, so I work with I have my students, I work with a lot of teenagers all the time. Thank you. And I'm also a writer and a poet, and I have 3 books out now. And one of my true passions as well is advocacy and work for the prevention of alcohol and drugs with Native American youth, and I've been doing this work now for many years throughout my life. And so a little bit about how I came here, and it kind of intersects with my work with Native teens. Those of you in this room, and I'm sure many of you are aware of the health disparities and the calamity that happens throughout the U.S. and Canada on tribal reservations, the disparities in curable diseases, alcoholism, suicides, depression, diabetes, and the list goes on and on. Just staggering numbers when it comes to Native American teens and the health disparities and so on, all these crises that the governments continue to be very, ignore or just not very active in helping these, dealing with these issues. And so, growing up here in Massachusetts as an indigenous person, I was one of those teens suffering from those many ills of alcohol and so on. And I was on my way to death by the time I was 21 years old. And so, drinking and using drugs and all these things I was caught up in. And a part of that had to do with many of the things that my brother here was sharing about, this disconnect that this colonialist society was imposing upon people like myself. I was disconnected from the land, my culture, my people, and who I was. When I look in the mirror, I didn't reflect what America was supposed to be. As it was purported in my schools and society, and what I saw on TV, the police, systems of jurisprudence, and so on, I didn't see people who reflected me or my views, and I was a caricature of my own being, a mascot, as it were. And so, and this happens to do with a lot of the crises that we now see throughout these tribal communities. And so, as I said, I was one of those kids who drank my problems away and trying to deal with this madness that was called America. How do I cope with this? But I always was a person who loved to learn. I was very interested in the stars and the universe, as my ancestors were. This inherent feeling to want to connect. But of course, the alcohol was impeding all this. And I share this story quite often. I remember vividly when I was in the hospital at 21 years old, almost drinking myself to death, and I was on the verge of dying, as it were, alcohol poisoning. And so in the hospital, they have those little TVs up in the corner, and I was watching, and of all things that happened to be on, it's PBS, Christopher Columbus. They were showing. And I never really thought about him too much before that, because I was too busy out partying and getting in trouble and so on. And so I'm watching this, and they come to the part where they talk about alcohol, and how Christopher Columbus and the Europeans brought alcohol to the Americas and summarily destroyed the communities, alcoholism, death, usurping land. All these tragedies were happening around alcohol. I never thought about it. And I tell you, in that hospital bed that day, something came over me that I could not explain. It was a chill, a sadness, a happiness, an anger, all these, just this vigor deep inside me just was like, just bursting inside me like thunder and lightning. And I couldn't explain it. But something was happening to me. And I never drank again after that day. And that's almost 29 years ago. And from that moment, I went on my journey trying to figure out what in the hell is happening here. What's going on around me? Why am I feeling like an outsider on my traditional lands? Why are my people destroying themselves from alcohol? So I really wanted to understand, what happened to my culture. Why don't I have a narrative in this story called America? Why aren't anything that I do or people I come from have any importance in the schools that I go to and so on? And so I began studying and reading and learning and going to my grandpa, who I was fortunate enough to learn from. It was many years of life. And it opened me up to so many different things about my culture, my traditions, and my people. And these are the things I was learning that were not taught in school. And shortly after that, my kids were born, and as I developed my knowledge of my culture, I was able to teach it and share it. So It's been quite the journey for me, and sitting here with you today, it's such an honor, and seeing my cousin over here, Sadada, and so it's always an honor to be able to share with people who are willing to listen and hear the message, not just for me sitting here, but me as the medium of the voice of my ancestors, the ones who were put in the boarding schools, the ones who were taken out to Deer Island here in the Boston Harbor and were barely able to survive and allow me to be here today. And so these are the stories that reflect this land, and it's not a pretty one, that people are so eager to kind of run away from. It doesn't fit into the theme of American exceptionalism when you think about the slavery and conquest and empire building and so on that this country was built on. And so that was the inspiration for a lot of my work, and for the most part to heal human beings, the Ninawa, the people that I come from, through my work of helping them to turn away from alcohol and drugs and so on that we're just kind of bombarded with on a daily basis through our teens and schools and so on. Because one of the issues that our young people have today is that they can't go out and have fun without these substances. And I'm there to remind them that you can have the fun, you can have all the excitement, and it's much better when you do it with a clear mind. So I've been very fortunate, the gift of healing through the removal of the alcohol and so on, at a very young age, 21 years old, and unfortunately I went to too many funerals of people, my relatives, who just couldn't relieve themselves. So I knew right on, just having that gift of the freedom to be the shackles unfettered from that, and I know it's so difficult because I've worked in the detox system for the beginning of my career in human services. And I know how tough it is for people to stop, so when we ask how are some able to do it and some not, there's really no answer. And so that's why a lot of my work today is with preventive. We work with the middle school children.